This is greetings from Visalakshi, Avinashalingam University, Coimbatore. Today, we'll start the session on residential space designing. The module that we deal today is Research on Housing in India, Emerging Trends and Prospects. Welcome to the session. Space planning is the core of all interior design projects. It often emphasizes the allocation and division of interior space to meet the requisites and needs of an individual client, whether they are looking for to plan a residential house or an office building. An ideal space planning makes a huge difference to where one resides or works, just like the comfort and convenience felt with a piece of furniture, a household appliance, or the impact of paint colors of the walls on the user of the home. While talking about space planning for a residential home, the designer needs to consider a number of important interrelated factors. Among others, the most important one to think about is how to design interiors satisfying the end user's custom needs and requirements. Of course, space is a unique element, and its planning, especially for residential purposes, is quite challenging in this dynamic world. Hence, specific objectives have been set such that by the end of the session, you would have understood the recent trends in residential space designing, known about the need and prospects for adaptive reuse and refurbishment in buildings, comprehend their role in reducing carbon footprints. First, let us understand why residential space designing is important. A perfect understanding on residential space planning is a felt requirement. The concept demonstrates the maxim more with less, meaning optimum utilization of all available space in the most efficient and effective manner, complying with the user's special needs and requirements. Space is one of the most valuable assets for human beings, as they reflect one's economic status with the passing of every day. It's a known fact that real estate booms are highly escalating. Hence, it is increasingly important to utilize every inch of space owned the best and most practical way possible, yet not compromising on modern trends. Research on improving methods of effective use of this element called space has been ongoing, as it has to comply with both the gratification of the demands of the residents as well as keeping abreast of the recent trends in the field of housing. Residential design enlists designing of the interior spaces of private residences. This type of design is obviously very specific to individual situations. Therefore, the needs and wants of the individual resident are paramount in this sector of interior design. The interior designer may be entrusted with a job from the initial planning stage or may be on a contract to remodel an existing building. It's often a very involved process that takes months to fine-tune and create a space including all that a prospective resident has in his vision of the house. Many aspects loom this sector, as awareness from the side of both the users and providers, that is manufacturers of the interior design products and the designer groups, are on the rise. Incorporation of recent trendy aspects have become challenges for all the groups. This is one side of the coin where new concepts and innovation rule the field. The other side of the coin poses constraints on the same group of players in the form of an impending threat, that is, non-availability of space on the one hand and presence of a large proportion of occupied spaces as long-standing built structures on the other. The latter, of late, are gradually losing their charm because they are found to lack many aspects of aesthetics, comfort, and convenience much preferred by modern residents. These facts further stress the need for research in the field. Research can cover many aspects related to housing, as you see on the screen, like optimum utilization of space, tackling space constraints for user satisfaction, incorporation of recent trends, designing innovative structures, building trendy houses, using innovative materials in construction, commissioning scientific advanced technologies in building designs, considering alternate use for old structures, that is adaptive reuse, making facelift in existing interiors or exteriors for value addition, it's called refurbishment, and thinking through sustainable options to retain existing structures. All these research aspects warranty new trends and prospects to emerge in this field. What are the emerging trends and prospects seen across? Trends, especially in residential space designing, happen due to the following major attributes: fluctuating outlook of consumers, the residents, deployment of new wave thoughts by architects, civil engineers, and interior designers, employing new genre prospects and materials in construction and decorating, sensitivity to environmental issues, awareness among consumers and supply side on interior design concepts, plus other influential factors. Let us consider each one by one. First one is fluctuating outlook of consumers, the residents. They are reflections of dynamic consumer behavior influenced by changes in the factors given in the screen. They include current status of residents, that is, whether they are urban or rural, whether their occupation status, their education status, etc. Nature of the residents, whether they are convention bound or modern, nature loving, etc. Liking for personalized interiors, individual needs and requirements, either for comfort, convenience, or luxury, sophistication versus casual comfort, showcasing of individuality and character in space and interior designing, liking for geometric forms and large outdoor spaces, inclusion of spaces of solitude, tranquility, privacy, etc. Nowadays you see many houses have places for physical exercise, strolling, meditation, etc. So such factors stated here influence residents' requirements depending on the changes in their status now and then. Eventually, none of the houses designed will ever be alike, nor the user's interests. The second one is deployment of new wave thoughts by the providers and suppliers. Stakeholders in the suppliers side always are ready to display their expertise in the houses provided using new wave products and technology. They influence changes in the sector by including more than a dozen options like creativity to repurpose in existing buildings, adoption of new wave concepts on minimalism, capitalizing the market trends, deploying experts, that is interior designers and architects, for space planning and remodeling, blending creativity and imagination with innovative material supplies, interest to bridge interiors with exteriors, and caution to ensure safety, security, and privacy in interiors. Acceptance of smart home or intelligent home prospects, innovative and functional thinking in the reuse of old buildings, capitalizing on the richness of material and space in obsolete structures, enlivening non-functional, unwieldy structures for new uses, preference for different types of glasses and metals for finishing, reformed functions of room interiors. So personal experiences coupled with a platter of advanced technology, these groups emerge as new trendsetters in the field. The third one is employing new genre prospects and materials in the construction or in decorating. What are these aspects and how do they influence trendy changes? See for yourself in the screen. Digital intervention in space and interior designing using AutoCAD, ArchiCAD, 3D printing, etc. Second one is luring companies producing various innovative materials and finishes like M-sand, paints, tiles, etc. Prospects for customization of products and designs, prospects for home, building automation and compactness in buildings, introduction of HMI and human sensitive and kinetic systems in buildings, advances in science and technology in house building sector, optimal use of modular units and prefabricated structures. These are remarkable advancements which have changed the building sector scenario itself. I hope you will definitely agree with me. Yes? Then we will see the next influential aspect. That is sensitivity to environmental issues. People in general have become quite sensitized to environmental issues in recent years. This change in outlook has had an impact on the selection and use of building materials too. The points listed in the slide are rather self-explanatory. Sensitivity to environmental degradation, knowledge on the impacts of the construction sector on the environment, readiness to adopt waste reduction, sensitivity to use of eco-friendly materials and construction techniques, understanding the potentials, durability and benefits of indigenous materials like terracotta, bamboo, etc. Doubtless, these technologies have created vibrant ripples in the construction sector, especially of residential buildings. Next one is awareness among consumers and supply side on interior design concepts. This is an important fact which has influenced both the demand sectors and suppliers alike and has caused welcome changes in their mindsets. So what changes do you see? Unwillingness to compromise on quality and detail, awareness on functional and aesthetic designing of interiors, demand for application of good taste in designing, preference for eclectic styles, that is convention blended with modern, influence of media, introducing new recent trends, quest for introducing thematic interiors. Apart from these facts discussed till now, there are three significant motivators which insist compulsory changes in the attitudes of both the groups. They are governmental and environmental regulations encouraging or curtailing demolition, color trends of each year. It was bold blues for 2016 and it is dark greens for 2017. Do you know that fact? Emphasis on clean, self-contained, healthy living environment, well lighted, ventilated, etc. as a part of the national and WHO standards and now the Swachh Bharat mission. Therefore, it can be summed up that research in the housing sector has emerged successful in bringing out a large-scale revolution in the Indian scenario. All such trendy initiatives offset the environmental balance in many ways. It's also clear from these aspects that people in general have widened their knowledge horizons on efficient, effective space planning, designing of interiors. It is also clear from these aspects that people in general have widened their knowledge horizons on efficient, effective space planning, designing of interiors, choice of commissioning of materials with a much required awareness on sustainability and nature care. Research endeavors in the field also addresses these issues. Appreciable environmental awareness stresses the inculcation of the practice of using anything other than throwing away, finding solutions to recycle or reuse them. The concept applies very well to buildings which had lost charm due to aging and lacking functionality. Instead of demolishing and deconstructing, a better option would be to recycle and reuse these buildings. This has been the subject of research for quite a long time, as the process would help both in saving cost and embodied carbon dioxide and prove more carbon efficient by reusing what is already built. What other significant efforts can be done to reduce the environmental impacts from the construction sector? It is time for retrospection. For a better understanding how the sector influences the environment on a negative note, you should know these aspects. I'll explain them. Impacts of the construction industry on the environmental factors. All industrial activities have contributed considerably well to environmental degradation, some very harsh enough to chuck certain aspects to the point of no return. Population explosion. See in the screen, already India has beaten China. So this in addition has heralded rise in demand for raw materials, especially natural resources, to extremely high levels, resulting in unprecedented exchange rates between the atmosphere and the human societal subsystem, and ultimately depletion of the less preserved resources. The construction sector, of course, is the contributor to national GDP to the extent of 8%. But in recent years, it has proved to be the fast-growing sector thanks to the rising population and urbanization. The alarming fact is the enormous carbon footprint of the sector. Measures on a war footing to stop or at least reduce natural resource depletion and turning back the clock to nullify effects of reckless actions needs emphasis. If not, the outcome may be catastrophic. Let us pledge and aim our efforts to protect Mother Earth. How can the construction sector be responsible? Estimates project the presence of 100 million buildings in the country, out of which 90% are designated as residential and the rest for commercial use. Out of the total energy consumed, more than 40% is used by these buildings. Continued use further not only depletes resources but also accumulates emission of carbon. Impacts to the environment from this sector should be watched keenly, as India has been declared the fourth largest emitter of carbon in the world. Greenhouse gas emissions from built environments arise primarily from consumption of fossil fuel based energy. Construction materials used in their turn also generate emissions. This is particularly true of insulation materials, refrigerants, and air coolants that we use in daily use. Turning an eye to green buildings would be the right choice. Why? Use of various building materials and their impacts could be addressed from the primary stage of processing, manufacturing, logging, storing, through installation and use. During all these processes, large quantities of energy are used, which contribute to overall production of carbon dioxide, which culminates in greenhouse effect. These stages are indicative of a building's life cycle, which are characteristic of the three phases, namely construction, maintenance, and end of life. Each phase uses different kind of energy like embedded or embodied energy, grey energy, induced energy, and operational energy. The last phase is but inevitable for all buildings, especially the recent ones, as they most often qualify for poor quality construction, but it can be changed by being cautious about the environment and trying to recycle or reuse them for good through strategic interventions. This becomes all the more significant as buildings lose their utility or usefulness over a period of time. Interventions can be several, among which identifying buildings for their obsolescence, adaptive reuse, and refurbishment, and adopting green building technology can gain significance. What is obsolescence in housing or buildings? Increase in vacancy rates, deferred or poor maintenance, and or abandoning buildings are common features in urban living. A building's value and performance will decline with the corresponding aging and related damages to its structures and external fabric. Despite that, its physical life can be stretched by careful maintenance and refurbishment efforts. Sometimes, buildings may retain good condition, but the expectations people have for its functioning may be marred. Hence, both a building's physical life as well as service life has to be considered for satisfactory performance. Once a building fails to provide services as expected by the user, it is called as obsolete. They are stamped obsolete only when they become completely useless with respect to all possible uses it can be expected to support. Hence, the decisive factors automatically enlist the trilogy of usefulness, desirability, and satisfaction. Based on attributes considered to mark a building as obsolete, there are 10 categories. Existing buildings stamped as obsolete or as rapidly approaching disuse, and those chosen for potential demolition appear as raw material mines for future projects. This is when one attempts to recover the hidden resources, a practice called resource recovery. Another best opportunity lies allowing the basic building framework to remain intact but think of a modified function. The latter approach is called adaptive reuse. It's like breathing new life into an existing structure. This measure, if followed, carries with it not only environmental and social benefits but also a method to retain one's regional or national heritage. What is adaptive reuse? Conventionally speaking, adaptive reuse is a process of adapting old buildings for renewed purposes. It suggests a phenomenon of protecting and preventing an old building from being knocked down, instead recycling and often retrofitting them with modern services catering to contemporary usage. So here the major portion of the structure along with the framework is retained in place while incorporating internal modifications. It is the ultimate end game for empty, abandoned spaces in metros and cosmopolitan neighborhoods. It's a special form of refurbishment that poses interesting challenges for designers. It offers a potential opportunity to develop a solution that meets with financial needs of owners and the functional needs of the consumers through design that addresses the nuances unique to the consumers. It is a sustainable choice in building use. It helps to conserve land, energy, and resources. It helps to preserve the heritage. These are the characteristics of adaptive reuse. The Preservation Green Lab of the National Trust for Historic Preservation concludes that it can take between 10 to 80 years for a new energy-efficient building to overcome, through more efficient operations, the negative energy and climate change impacts caused in the construction process. According to them, it will take about 65 years for an energy efficient new building to save the amount of energy lost in demolishing an existing building. Hence, retrofitting and reusing buildings may offer environmental and monetary savings over demolishing structures and rebuilding them. Hence, the impetus given for adaptive reuse. On the screen, you will be able to see 3 examples of adaptive reuse. First, a theatre to restaurant. Second one, a residence to a showroom. And the third is a residence to a restaurant, where the current owners had found a renewed purpose for each building. It is thus a process that retains as much as possible of the existing structure while upgrading the functionalities to suit prevalent standards and oscillating consumer requirements, coupled with rehabilitation and renovation of the structures for any use other than the designated one. To qualify for adaptive reuse, buildings need to satisfy a few major principles. They have to perform well the objective for which they are redesigned, that is, form should follow function, be durable and feasible for the redefined purpose, be responsive to the environment and try to enhance their value, be aesthetically captivating, promise minimal impacts on the environment, that is, being sustainable, non-polluting, energy efficient and easily accessible. Dynamic conditions existing in recent years have left a constant supply of buildings available for reuse, the use of which can be considered to comply with any of the 3 levels: adaptability within user, adaptability within use, and adaptability across use. Choice of buildings for adaptive reuse can be preference for the locality, availability of the building at good price, available when needed, adequate parking space provision, the character of the building, spaciousness, vintage charm, standalone structure, etc. Designing for adaptive reuse requires designing for the recovery of the majority of the building's components, that is, exterior walls, roofs, foundations, decking, exterior skin, frames, and so on. It also requires designing for recovery of the majority of the interior non-structural elements like interior walls, doors, floor coverings, ceiling systems, and so on. The examples of 2 buildings given in the screen prove how changes can be effected without changing the structure but retaining major components intact. In short, designing buildings for adaptive reuse should ideally expose the building structure to minor changes while undergoing major refurbishment. Refurbishment. What does it mean? Adopting refurbishment for adaptive reuse is giving momentum nowadays as commercial units and business centers are constantly on the lookout for spacious interiors. Those buildings which are functionally obsolete and those capitalizing on zoning and building laws, along with the boom in real estate sector, have made these realizable goals. It entails giving outdated buildings a new purpose for upgrading or reconfiguring it beyond the cosmetic corrections. Refurbishment done can be a very minor or insignificant work, but the changes it can bring out as value addition counts to a great extent. By doing so, the lifespan of the building can be automatically increased. How can opportunities for refurbishment be approached? By locating reasons, by finding preference for building sustainability, choice of level of refurbishment, identifying options for the 5 R's, and prospects for value addition. Refurbishment and modernization can effectively extend a building's life expectancy by resetting the clock, and this phenomenon plays a major role in the reusing and recycling of existing buildings as opposed to demolishing, commonly referred to as adaptive reuse. Reasons for refurbishment can be anything from improving building aesthetics, increasing usable floor space, complying with changes in building regulations, changes in use and to oblige for the needs to upgrade services, building suitability and main design specifications for which refurbishment is preferred can be delineated as preference for small segregated space around the building or large segregated spaces, attractive facade, open space around the building or parking space allocation. Similarly, level of refurbishment can be introduction of minor or cosmetic changes, services, structural modifications or major alterations. Evidences for such refurbishment attempts you would have seen in the earlier slides. Am I right? Have you understood the concepts? Now let us see the other 2 major aspects which advocate in the positive for the refurbishing old structures. Refurbishment of sub-superstructures like foundation, walls, flooring, etc. and fenestrations, service components like plumbing, sanitary facilities, HVAC equipment, etc., aesthetic components like facade, interior wall finishes, and landscaping. For extension and conversion of room, creating a balcony or portico can be attempted by retaining the original, repairing or renewing them, replacing with better alternative, removing them or introducing new components. In the purchase of a constructed facility, the buyer or owner values those components that are in place when the owner occupies the building. The activities necessary to place these components are hence value adding in the owner's perspective. Inadequacy in the number of emergency exits, insufficient natural lighting, vastu reasons, inadequacy of potable water or natural ventilation and usable space, and inappropriate circulation routes, and anything like these can warrant refurbishment. Incorporation of intelligent smart systems and assuring uninterrupted power supply also are unwritten rules of the day, which are visibly absent in old buildings. Requirements for an intelligent system include security, connectivity, the ability to adapt according to current data, and the capacity for remote monitoring and management. Refurbishment options facilitate introduction of these value additions too. The slides will help you understand the benefits. Next is the concept of green buildings in terms of adaptive reuse. Demand for energy from all quarters, especially the younger generation, is growing at an exponential rate. Pursuing energy efficiency in buildings is vital to energy security, as it can warrant cost-effective reduction of carbon dioxide emissions by 2030. Thereby, users can think of achieving sustainability in buildings. This practice of adaptive reuse and refurbishment in turn can help control heavy energy costs, tackle environmental deterioration issues, and increase the value and competitiveness of buildings. Simply stated, a green building is supposedly one that already exists, because it may not demand additional resources or the related types of energy. It is called so also because saving material resources comes with repairing a building rather than its demolishment. Reducing pollution from byproducts of processing raw materials can take place. Preventing dumping of debris in landfills can be monitored. Helping to equip them with eco-friendly solutions enables achievement of higher operational performance. And rendering workplaces energy efficient along with low carbon emissions and zero weight measures. By adopting these, one can climb up the ladder from meaner to leaner green technologies, as you can see on the screen. Similarly, it helps consumers to follow the principles of sustainability and contribute for the nation and the world at large. What are the principles of sustainable design? Using materials that do not emit toxic particles, fumes or gases. Using HVAC and lighting systems that help reduce or eliminate energy use. Adopting measures to curtail deterioration of the environment at the global level. Relate the building plan designs to the regional stipulations to ensure harmonious relationship. Achieve an efficient blend of building form, mechanical systems and construction technology. These are the 5 principles. Focused attention to the reports of the National Trust for Historic Preservation gains significance as they blame the construction sector for a considerable proportion of damage done to the environment, and also claim that it would take more than a century to rectify the damages caused. According to them, retrofitting and reusing buildings may offer environmental and monetary savings over demolishing structures and rebuilding them. Through adoption of adaptive reuse, many benefits can be included, like energy conservation, contribution to sustainability, time and cost savings in construction activity, environmental benefits, potential tax advantages, increase in market value of the house, enhanced community character, encouragement for investment, and reduced carbon footprints. With this, let me summarize. Through adoption of adaptive reuse, many benefits can be included, like energy conservation, contribution to sustainability, time and cost savings in construction activity, environmental benefits, potential tax advantages, increase in market value of the house, enhanced community character, encouragement for investment, and reduced carbon footprints. With this, I conclude. Focused planning and a sincere effort to practice the 9 R's, that is, restore, reduce, renew, recover, recycle, reuse, rethink, replenish, and replace, in this context is gaining popularity, and the resolution has roped in architects, interior designers in the wake. Therefore, by practicing adaptive reuse and refurbishment, individuals can contribute as green consumers and join the nation in reducing energy consumption. Come on, let's join hands to create a new green consumer activist group. Let us make the place more comfortable to live. Thank you.